I caught my daughter dating my boyfriend and my son-in-law. I have always been an organized woman, with a solid career and a stable relationship with Lucas, my boyfriend of 3 years. My daughter, Camila, was about to marry Pedro, the young man everyone considered perfect. The future seemed promising, but in the blink of an eye, my world turned into a nightmare. It was an ordinary night, and I came home early, eager to spend time with my family. However, upon opening the door, I was confronted with a scene I could never have imagined. Camila, my beloved daughter, was romantically involved with Lucas, my own boyfriend, and also with Pedro, her fiancé. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Betrayal was everywhere, and I found myself surrounded by lies I had never suspected. In that moment, an avalanche of doubts began to consume me. How could my daughter, to whom I had dedicated so much love and care, get involved with the man I loved? And Lucas, whom I always thought was the ideal partner, had become a traitor. The feeling of helplessness and confusion tormented me. I needed to make difficult choices and above all understand who the real victim was in this web full of secrets and emotional manipulations. As I struggled to rebuild my life, I found myself on a painful journey of self-discovery. Questions began to arise incessantly. How could I have been so naive? Where did I go wrong? With each answer, more moral dilemmas appeared, and I wondered if I would be able to forgive those I loved most. Chaos settled in my heart, and I knew I needed to find the strength to move forward. But the path was filled with unexpected revelations. As I delved deeper into this emotional storm, I realized that despite the pain, this could be an opportunity to reconnect with myself. The quest for answers became my guiding light, and I was determined to understand how my life had crumbled so quickly. Now, facing my fears and anxieties, I felt that the journey had only just begun, and that somehow I would find a new path, even if the destination remained uncertain. That night was just the beginning of a storm that seemed endless. After the discovery, I found myself in a state of shock, unable to process everything that was happening. Anger and pain crashed over me like waves, submerging me without warning. The first thing I did was distance myself from home, seeking a place where I could breathe. I walked through the deserted streets, aimless, as tears streamed down my face. It was there, under the dim light of a street lamp, that I realized I needed to make a decision. I could not let that betrayal define who I was. But the truth was that the road ahead was filled with obstacles. I had to face Camila, the daughter I loved, who now felt like a stranger. What had happened to our connection? That relationship challenged everything I believed about family, love, and loyalty. How could I look into her eyes again, knowing she had stolen not only a boyfriend from me, but also the trust I had placed in her? The first conversation with Camila was a nightmare. I was furious, but also filled with questions. She was in a state of denial, trying to justify her actions. "Mom, I didn't mean any harm. I love Lucas, but I also love Pedro," she said, as if that could offer any comfort. Her words echoed in my mind like a cruel mantra. How could she love 2 men at the same time? This confusion was unbearable. With every word, I felt I was losing my daughter to a world I could not comprehend. Lucas, for his part, had no words that could calm me. He seemed more concerned with justifying his behavior than understanding my pain. "I didn't know you had such a strong connection with Camila," he said, as if that could justify his betrayal. I realized he was more lost than I was. That night had stripped bare not only the secrets that loomed between us, but also the fragility of what he believed to be love. With every encounter, every attempt at dialogue, I saw a man who was just as confused as I was. As I fought to regain my composure, I realized that a new strength was emerging within me. But this strength was not easy to handle. I needed to deal with betrayal, pain, and uncertainty, but there was also a growing desire to find myself again. I decided to join a support group, where other women shared their stories of overcoming adversity. There, I found solace and strength in similar experiences, and I realized I was not alone in this struggle. However, life had more surprises in store. One day, during one of the meetings, I met Mariana, a woman going through a painful separation. She had been betrayed by her husband and had a young daughter. What started as a casual friendship quickly turned into a deep bond. Mariana helped me understand that I didn't need to carry the weight of everything alone. She had her own scars, but also an impressive determination to start anew. Together, we began to support each other in our challenges, sharing not only the pain, but also the small victories. Yet, the blossoming friendship between us was not without complications. Mariana had her own insecurities, and in a moment of desperation, she pulled away. I was caught off guard, and once again found myself facing loneliness. The feeling of abandonment that I already knew so well returned with full force. What I had learned about friendship and trust seemed to crumble before me. I was on the verge of falling into a cycle of despair. But then I realized I couldn't let that define me. The search for a new self required me to confront my own demons. While trying to distance myself from the pain of betrayal, I realized that I needed to look inward and understand what I truly desired. What did I want for my life, for my career, and most importantly, for my relationship with Camila? The answer was not simple, and the journey was just beginning. The most surprising turn of events occurred when I received a message from Pedro, Camila's fiancé. He wanted to talk. What could he possibly have to say? Curiosity consumed me, and despite all my reservations, I decided to meet him. The conversation was intense and filled with tension, but Pedro revealed that he was also confused and hurt. He believed that the relationship with Camila was not what it seemed, and that there was much more at stake than just betrayal. This revelation left me even more restless, as it somehow felt like we were all lost in a maze of uncontrollable emotions. Now, as I navigated through this tumultuous sea of feelings, I realized that the only person who could change the course of my life was myself. The pain and betrayal were palpable, but the strength to overcome them was within me. And as difficult as it was, I was determined to face each challenge, rediscover my worth, and find a new path, even if the future was uncertain. The meeting with Pedro was a turning point. The anticipation I felt when seeing him was a mix of curiosity and fear. He seemed as lost as I was, which made me feel a little less alone. When we met at a nearby cafe, the tension was palpable. His gaze, which I had previously seen as a symbol of betrayal, now carried a different weight. It was the expression of a man who was also facing his own internal battles. "I don't know where to start," he said, breaking the silence. I looked at him, trying to decipher his intentions. "Camila, all of this was a mistake. I didn't expect things to reach this point. I wanted to scream, wanted him to feel all the pain I was carrying, but instead I just listened." He continued, explaining that he felt guilty for getting involved with Camila, that their relationship was not as simple as it seemed. He spoke of insecurities, expectations, and the pressure of being the perfect fiancé. Each of his words seemed to lift a weight from my chest, but at the same time, a new layer of confusion formed. The truth is that I loved the idea of being with her, but I wasn't prepared for what that meant. When I realized I was in love, it was already too late, he confessed, his eyes filled with regret. There, in front of him, I realized that he was also a product of his own choices. The betrayal had been just a part of a much larger puzzle. What impacted me the most were his words about how he felt about me. "I never wanted to hurt you, and I feel like I lost a friend while betraying your trust." That sentence hit me hard. I didn't see him as a friend, but the idea that he felt he had lost something valuable was like a mirror reflecting my own pain. On my way home that night, my mind was a storm. The answers I sought were not as clear as I had hoped. I was still furious with Camila, still felt betrayed by Lucas, but now there was a new element at play. Pedro, in his vulnerability, made me realize that we were all human, prone to mistakes and confusion. The betrayal was still unacceptable, but seeing Pedro as a flawed human being made everything more complex. With this new perspective, I found myself in a moment of deep reflection. What did I really want? The pain of betrayal still burned, but it was no longer just about revenge or guilt. It was about how I could rebuild my life. I began to question whether what I felt for Camila was just anger, or if there was love there, a love that could be transformed. And what about Lucas? He was still a part of my life, and what did I want from him? Anger was no longer enough to propel me forward. The truth is that I no longer wanted to live trapped in these negative emotions. I wanted freedom and peace. I decided that I needed to talk to Camila again. It was time to truly understand her perspective, to hear what she had to say. What I didn't know was that this conversation would change everything once again. When we finally met, the atmosphere was tense. Camila seemed nervous, and so did I. "Mom, I don't know how to explain," she began, her voice trembling. But I didn't want her to justify herself. I wanted to understand. "Camila, I'm not here to judge you. I just want to know why you did this. What was missing between us?" The words floated in the air like an uneasy breeze. Camila, with tears in her eyes, told me about her insecurities, about how she always felt less than me, her mother. She spoke about the weight of expectations and the pressure to be perfect. In that moment, I realized that the betrayal was merely a desperate cry for help, not an act of malice. I just wanted to be loved, Mom. And I thought that if I loved two people, maybe I could find what was missing in me, she said sincerely. What I saw in that moment was not just the betrayal, but the pain of a young woman trying to find her place in the world. My heart broke as I realized that the connection I thought I had lost could be recovered, but not without a joint effort. That was a turning point. I realized that the pains of the past did not have to dictate my future. The betrayal was a scar, but not my destiny. Camila and I had the opportunity to rebuild our relationship, to understand each other, and that was more important than any revenge. I decided that, regardless of what happened with Lucas or Pedro, I was ready to move on and rewrite my story. A story where I would not be defined by the mistakes of others, but rather by the strength I would find within myself. That meeting with Camila was transformative. As I listened to her talk about her insecurities and fears, I realized that we often get lost in our own battles and forget to look at others. The betrayal, which I saw as an act of malice, revealed itself to be a desperate cry for love and understanding. I wasn't the only one carrying pain. She was also fighting against her limitations. As she spoke, I felt a mix of sadness and compassion. The story I had built in my mind about the betrayal was crumbling, and a new perspective was emerging. I understood that to move forward, I needed to let go of the burden of the past. The anger that had once consumed me began to dissipate, making room for something more constructive. I decided that I needed to allow myself to feel and understand my emotions. The anger and pain were legitimate, but they were also barriers preventing me from moving ahead. I realized that overcoming was not just about forgiving others, but also about forgiving myself for allowing myself to be carried away by feelings of betrayal. This was an essential step to freeing myself from what held me back. In the following weeks, I began to rebuild my life with more resilience. I became more open to listening to the people around me, accepting help, and welcoming constructive criticism. My relationship with Camila began to flourish again. Together, we decided to leave our grievances behind and build a new chapter. This was not easy, but each conversation, each gesture of affection, brought us closer. I learned that success is not measured by the absence of failures, but by the ability to start over. The true wealth lay in human connections and the love we share. Each day I became stronger and more confident in my choices. The transformation I had long sought was not in seeking revenge on those who hurt me, but in freeing myself from their shadows. The lessons I learned became part of me. I was ready to live with more authenticity and less fear. The pain that once paralyzed me now propelled me to be a better version of myself. Looking back, I realized that every challenge I faced had shaped me, and I was finally ready to embrace life with a lighter heart and a more open mind. What was once a burden was now becoming a path of growth and love, both for myself and for others. That afternoon, the sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a play of shadows on the ground. I was sitting on a park bench, my heart racing. Camila and I had committed to facing our truths, but what I was about to reveal left me in a state of nervousness. The weight of the words I had been holding was immense, and I knew I needed to let them out. I took a deep breath and looked into her eyes. "Camila, I also have fears," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm afraid of not being enough, of not being loved the way I would like, and more than anything, I'm afraid of losing you." Tears streamed down my face, and I couldn't hold them back. What was once anger was now transforming into vulnerability. Camila looked at me, and I saw a mix of surprise and understanding in her gaze. "I never wanted you to feel that way," she replied softly. I was so caught up in my own insecurities that I didn't realize how much you needed me. The betrayal wasn't just a mistake, it was a cry for help. And now here we are, trying to rebuild something that seemed lost. I felt as if an immense weight was being lifted. The barriers I had constructed around my heart began to crumble. "Let's do this together," I said with newfound determination. "Let's talk, listen, and support each other. We can't change the past, but we can choose how we want to move forward." In that moment, I realized that our friendship was transforming into something stronger. The pain that had once separated us was now uniting us. I decided I would no longer let fear govern my life. I was ready to open up, to take risks, and above all, to love again. The path ahead would be challenging, but I was no longer alone. That afternoon, beside Camila, I realized that true strength lay not in hiding my fears, but in sharing them. By opening my heart, I not only relieved the weight I carried, but also built a new bond with someone I loved deeply. I learned that vulnerability is a bridge that connects us, and facing truths, no matter how painful they may be, can lead us to a place of healing and renewal. Our journey won't be easy, but now I know I can count on Camila. Together, we are willing to face challenges, learning and growing. This journey has transformed me, teaching me that love is stronger than any mistake, and that true friendship withstands the test of time and difficulties. If you have also gone through tough times, remember, sharing your struggles can open doors to new possibilities. Don't hesitate to tell your story. Leave a comment below, and let's create a space of support and transformation together. Check out the video on your screen now. Like and subscribe for more inspiring content, because your voice matters, and your experience can help others.